The first thing Captain Layla Thorne noticed as the Black Hawk dipped over the jagged ridgelines of the Shatterpoint Range was the smoke, thick, black, oily, rising in a column not far from the base perimeter. The pilot didn't comment on it. He just jerked the throttle, grunted, and muttered over the headset. "Welcome to FOB Shatterpoint. Try not to die." The descent was rough. The wind kicked up dust like angry spirits. As they touched down, Layla ducked low beneath the rotors. One hand pressed the duffel slung across her back, the other instinctively checking the strap that kept her trauma pack strapped to her chest. Her boots hit the dirt and instantly sank half an inch into the hot, cracked earth. The bird lifted again in a screech of metal and rotors, and just like that, she was alone, one speck of calm in a sandblasted hellhole of tension and testosterone. A corporal with a clipboard stood nearby, sweating through his camo uniform and chewing a toothpick like it owed him money. He looked up, scanned her face, then her uniform, then blinked. You're the new nurse?" Layla nodded once. "Captain Layla Thorne, 3rd Combat Medical Support. Reporting in." He blinked again, as if expecting someone else. "Right. They didn't say you'd be taller?" She deadpanned, brushing past him. "Prettier," he muttered behind her. She didn't flinch. She'd heard it before. She would hear it again. The FOB was chaos. Soldiers barked orders. A Humvee limped through the yard with one flat tire, and a private vomited into a trash barrel, while a sergeant shouted at him for wasting MREs. Somewhere in the background, machine gun fire echoed from a training range, or maybe not a training range. It was impossible to tell. Layla entered the command tent with dust still clinging to her sleeves. Inside, the air was slightly cooler, but no less hostile. At the center of the room stood Master Sergeant Dane Weller, tall, sun-scorched, barrel-chested, a relic of 100 battles and not one apology. He didn't look up as she saluted. "Captain Thorne reporting in. You're the new Band-Aid ferry," he said without preamble, eyes still on the tactical map laid out in front of him. He finally looked up. "Thought they were sending us a combat dock." "They did," she replied. He looked her over, one eyebrow twitching. "No offense, Captain, but I expected someone with more dust on their boots." "Trust me, Sergeant. My boots have been places yours haven't," she replied coolly. That got a slight pause, not respect, but irritation. He didn't like being talked back to, especially not by someone with lip balm in her side pouch and sleeves rolled with precision. "I've got grunts bleeding out, patrols stretched too thin, and a command that thinks sending me a nurse with pretty eyes is a morale boost. So unless you brought miracle gauze or holy water in that medkit, stay behind the line and try not to get shot." Layla didn't blink. "Understood, Sergeant. I'll save the ones your guys try to get killed." A voice snorted from behind her. Private First Class Krantz, tall, pale, with a buzz cut that suggested more gym time than combat time. He leaned against the wall with 2 other soldiers who all wore the same amused expression. "What you gonna do, Sergeant?" Krantz said, loud enough for everyone in the tent to hear. "Hand the enemy a thermometer?" A few others chuckled. Someone made a coughing sound that sounded suspiciously like Florence Night No Chance. Layla turned, facing the wall of testosterone. She didn't raise her voice. "You ever treat a sucking chest wound with a pen cap and your bare hands, Private?" Krantz paused. "Didn't think so," she said, turning back toward Weller. He didn't smile, but he also didn't stop her. "You'll be embedded with Alpha Squad. We're wheels up in 2 hours. Patrol recon. High IED probability. You'll ride rear Humvee. Keep your kit tight and your head down." She nodded. "Copy." As she turned to leave, Weller added, "And Captain, we don't babysit. If you can't keep up, you'll be a liability. I don't have time for a rescue mission." She paused, then gave the only response her pride would allow. "I don't need babysitting. I pulled wounded out of burning vehicles under direct fire." Weller grunted. "Yeah? That before or after your Starbucks shift?" More laughter followed her out the tent. She didn't react. She didn't need to. 2 hours later, Layla stood by the Humvees, checking straps, examining bandage seals, organizing triage meds into rapid access slots. She heard the muttering, "High maintenance, princess, tick-tock nurse." She ignored them. Every click of Velcro, every secured ampoule, every tightened suture needle was a silent rebuttal. One soldier walked past and whistled. "You gonna Instagram this mission, Doc?" Layla didn't even look up. "You gonna scream for mommy when your femoral artery gets clipped?" That shut him up. Weller approached with final briefings. "Objective is a downed drone, likely hit by small arms. Intelligence says rebels want the hardware. We want it first. No civilians expected. But this is contested terrain. No hero moves." He glanced at her, eyes narrowing. "That means you too." She gave him a tight nod. "Copy, Sergeant." The convoy rolled out as the sun began its descent, baking the sky in orange. Layla rode in the rear Humvee, wedged between crates of ammo and a nervous PFC named Morales, who clutched his rifle like a childhood blanket. "You ever seen combat?" he asked her nervously. She didn't answer. Instead, she stared out the window as the mountains rose around them like clenched fists, shadows lengthening, danger thickening in the air. An hour in, the radio crackled. Alpha 1 to base, hitting GPS dead zones. Terrain's throwing off Saturn AV. Weller's voice came over. "Keep tight formation. Eyes open. Dismount if necessary." Moments later, the lead Humvee slowed, then stopped. Krantz, now gunner on the middle vehicle, popped out of the top turret. "Something's off," he muttered. Layla's hand drifted toward her trauma scissors. Not her weapon. Not yet. But something cold tightened in her chest. A sixth sense honed not in hospitals, but in blackened alleyways and collapsed safe houses long before she wore the Red Cross patch. She leaned forward. "Morales, how many people did you see when we passed that ridgeline 20 minutes back?" The kid blinked. "What?" "I saw 6 shadows, but only 5 boots." "You?" He blinked again. I didn't." Her radio crackled violently. Full static. Then a single word came through. "Ambush." The explosion hit the lead Humvee in a roar of orange fire and smoke. If you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to support the channel. The blast lifted the lead Humvee off its wheels before gravity remembered to do its job. The vehicle flipped sideways, crashed into a ditch, and bloomed into flame. The shockwave rolled through the canyon like a god's roar, slamming into the second Humvee and rattling the third like dice in a shaken fist. Inside her vehicle, Layla didn't scream. She counted the beats in her head. 1 Mississippi, 2, then shoved the door open with a grunt, ignoring the searing pain in her left shoulder. Morales beside her was frozen, eyes wide, lips stammering. "Oh, God! Oh, God! Oh!" "Stay here," she said sharply, yanking her med pack. "Gun up. Eyes out. You're not dying today, Morales." She was out before he could protest, boots hitting sand, mind already slicing through 1,000 protocols at once. Triage order, cover angles, blood volume retention rates, weapon locations. The canyon rang with the sharp cracks of gunfire. Echoes masked their origin. Whoever hit them knew this terrain. Weller's voice was screaming over comms, barely audible through the static. "Contact left. Return fire. Keep that goddamn rear flank locked." Smoke veiled everything in a choking gray fog, but Layla didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward the flaming wreckage of the lead Humvee. 3 bodies were already visible. One slumped against the driver's seat, a second crawling away with a trail of blood painting the rocks behind him, and a third trapped under the twisted axle. She slid down the embankment, landed hard, and immediately dropped to her knees beside the crawling man. Corporal Evans. Femoral wound. Arterial spray. 20 seconds max. She jammed a hemostatic gauze pad against the gush of blood and screamed, "Stay awake," while her free hand unlatched the tourniquet and snapped it into place. "I can't feel," Evans gasped. "You don't need to feel. You just need to stay alive," she barked, cinching the tourniquet until his leg went pale. The Humvee behind them barked back with a .50 cal, pounding rounds into the ridgeline above. But they weren't suppressing fast enough. Someone screamed for air support. Someone else shouted about being pinned down. The canyon had become a coffin. Another burst of gunfire spat down from the cliffs. Rocks shattered near her head. Layla didn't flinch. "Evans, you with me?" "Why, yeah," he rasped. "Good." I'm coming back for you. She leapt to the next body, the one crushed beneath the axle. A private, no name, face caked in soot and blood. She checked for a pulse. Gone. She closed his eyes. No time for grief. Not yet. By the time she was halfway up the hill, dragging Evans with one arm while shielding his head with her body, Weller came running down the slope. What the hell are you doing? You're going to get yourself. Evans is stable. He needs evac and pressure meds in 30. I've got another bleeder near the wreck. Weller stared at her, stunned, then ducked a shot that zinged past his head. You've got brass balls, Captain, he muttered. She didn't answer. She was already moving. They managed to get Evans into cover near the third Humvee, where 2 other wounded had been pulled, one with a collapsed lung, another with a fractured skull. Layla fell into the chaos like she'd been born to it. Hands moved with impossible speed. Her voice was sharp, clinical, commanding. Turn him. I need to vent this lung, or he'll drown in blood. Morales. I said turn him now. Yes, ma'am. Morales scrambled into action. She popped a chest decompression needle with her teeth and inserted it just above the rib line. A sharp hiss of air escaped, and the soldier gasped. Air in. Air out. He was back. He's good, she said, sweat streaming into her eyes. That was when Weller knelt beside her, blood on his arm. You're hit, she said. It's not mine. She looked again. His face was tight, eyes hollow. I lost 3. One was my comms tech. We're blind. Layla didn't hesitate. Then we fix that. Get me to the second Humvee. You need to stay with the wounded. I need to get a signal out. I trained as a field op long, before I wore this patch. Weller paused. You're not just a nurse, are you? She looked at him. I haven't been just a nurse in a long time. He gave her a strange look, a mix of suspicion, recognition, and regret. They moved together, crawling low toward the middle Humvee. Enemy fire had slowed, but only because it was repositioning. Inside the second vehicle, the radio was shredded, but the mobile signal booster had survived. Layla yanked it free, removed the casing, and began reconfiguring its output frequency. Weller watched her in stunned silence. What unit did you say you were with again? I didn't. By nightfall, they had stabilized the perimeter, though the canyon felt more like a slaughterhouse than a defensive position. No extraction had come. No air support. Nothing. It was as if the entire FOB had vanished. Morales and another soldier dug trenches for cover. Layla performed 4 more field surgeries, rehydrated 3 semi-conscious troopers, and even stitched her own forearm, a jagged scrape from shrapnel, without flinching. During the brief lull, Krantz approached. His arm was bandaged, his ego more so. I owe you, he muttered. She didn't respond. I thought you were, he trailed off. I mean, you're not like the other medics. I'm not. Where'd you learn all that? Layla looked at the stars. They were cruel and cold and still. Places no one comes back from. He swallowed. You think we'll make it out? She met his eyes. Only if we stop bleeding and start thinking. By midnight, they were down to 9 soldiers. Half were wounded. All were exhausted. Layla hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, but her focus was steel. When Weller finally sat beside her by the flickering remains of fire, he handed her a ration bar. You were right about the ambush, he admitted. They knew we were coming. I think they still know, she replied. They've been toying with us, pushing us into a kill box. This isn't random insurgency. Someone fed them intel. He nodded. You suspect a mole? I suspect a leak. Maybe not intentional, but something's wrong. You were Black Ops, weren't you? She said nothing for a long time. Then, I was Ghost Echo, Team 6, Europe, North Africa, and 2 years in the Tigris Black Zone, until an op got blown. My team died. I survived. Weller stiffened. Ghost Echo? No shit. She nodded once. I heard stories. Thought you all died. Some did. The rest wish they had. He looked away. Layla's voice dropped. After that op, I walked, asked for reassignment, became a nurse. And now you're here, saving our asses. I didn't come to fight, Weller. But I'm not letting anyone else die because someone thinks I belong behind a clipboard. He stared at her. Then quietly, I misjudged you. Layla gave a half-smile. You're not the first. The next morning brought silence. The kind that's too quiet. Layla didn't trust it. She made Morales do a sensor sweep of the ridges. No heat signatures. No movement. But her gut screamed otherwise. She approached Weller. We can't stay here. This canyon's a grave. They're waiting to finish the job. Weller hesitated. We're low on ammo. No comms. Half our people are on stretchers. Then we carry them. He looked at her, then nodded. All right, you've got point. As the squad prepared to move, Morales handed Layla a cracked handheld radio, one she'd left in the wreckage. Captain, I cleaned it up. It's still busted. But I heard something weird last night. He clicked play. It was static, mostly. Then a voice, faint. Alpha, squad, off course, coordinates match. Proceed with cleanup. Layla's blood turned to ice. That's our command frequency, she said. Weller paled. They knew. Someone told them. Layla closed her eyes, jaw clenched. Then we don't just have insurgents. We've got betrayal. She looked up toward the ridgeline. The canyon was no longer just a battlefield. It was a trap set from within, and she was going to lead them through it, or die trying. The canyon narrowed as Alpha's squad moved east, deeper into terrain more suited to mountain goats and ghosts and wounded soldiers. They marched in painful silence, with Layla at the front, the wounded strapped to makeshift litters or carried 2 by 2. The dawn sun filtered through jagged cliffs, throwing long shadows that danced like specters across the stone. Layla's boots were stained with blood, some of it hers, most of it not. Each step forward dragged her further into memories she had spent years burying, memories that now felt too familiar. The terrain, the silence, the way command had gone quiet just before everything exploded. Deja vu clawed at her throat like a noose. She pushed it down. 2 clicks to the fallback point. Weller muttered behind her. After that, we head north. I know of an old supply cache tucked in an abandoned shepherd's outpost. If the map's right, we can hold out there. Layla nodded without looking back. She was already scanning the ridgelines, counting possibilities, gauging cover points, identifying potential ambush zones like she was back in the black. It came too easily, a language her body remembered even if her soul had tried to forget. Behind her, Krantz was struggling with a stretcher, his right arm still slung in a bandage. Why the hell are we going deeper into this canyon? He grunted. Feels like we're walking into another setup. We are, Layla said flatly. But at least this time I know it. Comforting, Krantz muttered. Morales trotted up beside her. The kid looked better, not good, but better. He'd shaken off the first wave of shell shock, and now moved with the kind of hyperalert anxiety only real combat could teach. Captain, he whispered, about that recording. I know, she said. We'll talk about it soon. They moved for another hour in tense silence. The fallback point was a mess. Half a bunker buried in dirt, overgrown with dry brush and surrounded by jagged stone outcroppings. It wasn't on any official map, which was probably why Layla chose it. She ran her hand over the rusted hatch, then pulled it open. Inside it was dark, damp, and barely large enough for all of them, but it had walls, cover, and a narrow entrance. That was enough. Get the wounded inside, she ordered. Post a watch. Rotate every hour. Morales with me. As the squad filed in, Weller caught up. You trust him? He asked quietly, nodding toward Morales. Layla's eyes followed the young private as he moved to a broken comms console inside the bunker. I don't trust anyone, she replied, but I believe him. Weller crossed his arms. You think a man sold us out? I think someone did. Someone with access to our route, comms frequencies, and drone priority. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Inside the bunker, Morales worked while Layla paced. Her shoulder ached. Her ribs were bruised, and her body was running on caffeine and adrenaline. But her mind was sharper than it had been in years. You said you intercepted a cleanup order? She asked. Morales nodded, eyes glued to the radio circuitry he'd stripped down. Yeah, It came right after the ambush. On our frequency. It wasn't encrypted, either. Just direct. Layla frowned. That's not just sloppy. That's deliberate. She stared at the wall, then placed a hand against the concrete, like she could see through it. This happened before, she said, almost too softly to hear. Same setup, different terrain. Back in the black zone. We walked into an ambush so perfectly laid out. It could have been a training exercise. My team, Bravo, 6, they died within minutes. Morales looked up. You were Black Ops? I was a ghost, she replied. Before I was a nurse, I was part of Ghost Echo, Tier 1 Recon and Recovery. We went where satellites couldn't. We retrieved what no one else could. And when missions went wrong, we didn't get medals. We got erased. He swallowed. How'd you survive? Luck. And a collapsed tunnel, she said. When I came out, I found a radio, and I heard the cleanup order. Same words. Same voice. That's when I knew we'd been sacrificed. She met his eyes. That's why I became a nurse. Because patching up men like you, men who never get the truth, was the only way I could live with myself. Morales stared at her, like seeing her for the first time. Then he asked, What do we do now? Layla looked toward the door. We stopped dying quietly. She gathered the squad in the bunker's main chamber. Half of them sat against walls, holding dressings to their wounds. The others stood with arms crossed or rifles slung low. The mood was grim. Morale was smoke-thin. Listen up, Layla said. I'm not your CO, but I'm the one who's going to get you out of here alive. So here's what you need to know. Eyes turned toward her, tired, skeptical, wounded. We've been compromised. That ambush wasn't luck. Someone gave away our position, possibly our entire route. There are no reinforcements coming. And if that voice I heard is right, we're not meant to be rescued. Krantz scoffed. That's crazy. Why would Command burn their own squad? Layla's eyes narrowed. Because something we were near or someone in the squad is valuable enough to erase the rest. That shut him up. She stepped forward. I don't know who the leak is yet. I don't know if it's direct treason or just a bug in our system. But I'm not going to let us die in a canyon because someone in an air-conditioned office thinks we're expendable. Weller leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So what's your plan, Captain? She pulled a map from her kit and spread it on the dirt floor. We move north to the shepherd's outpost you mentioned. If it's still intact, we can dig in, secure comms, and set up a proper defense. Morales is working on short-range signal pinging. If we can get high enough, maybe we'll catch a drone sweep. Krantz shook his head. We barely have ammo. Then make every shot count. She looked around the room. If anyone wants to sit this out, now's the time. But if you follow me, I need full trust. No more jabs about being just a nurse. No more doubts. I've pulled men out of black sites. I've led rescues behind enemy lines. You want to make it home? Follow me. Silence. Then Morales stepped forward. I'm in. One by one, heads nodded. Even Krantz. Finally, Weller said, All right, Captain. You got point. Later that night, Layla sat outside the bunker under a blanket of stars. Weller joined her, dropping a canteen into her lap. Hydration, nurse. She smirked. You're learning. I owe you an apology, he said. Back at the FOB, I dismissed you. Treated you like window dressing. You did, she replied. He nodded. Truth is, I've been in too long. Seen too many people wear uniforms and act like it's cosplay. I didn't think someone like you could be real. And yet here I am. They sat in silence for a while. Then he said, When this is over, you ever think about going back to Black Ops? She didn't answer immediately. Then, I think about not going back more. Weller looked at her. You're damn good, Layla. I was better when I didn't care. Just before dawn, Morales got a signal spike. Captain, he said, rushing to her. I got something. It's faint, but it's there. A drone. Probably 3 clicks north. Layla leaned over the console. Can you tag it? Working on it. But if it's an allied drone and we get close enough, we can piggyback a transmission. Might even get eyes in the sky. Layla nodded. Pack everything. We move in 30. They left the bunker like shadows, wounded slung between shoulders, rifles low, boots silent. Layla led them through forgotten goat paths, up steep inclines, and across dried riverbeds until their legs trembled. At the ridgeline, they found the signal again, stronger now. Morales pointed. There, that peak. It's hovering. Probably doing a survey sweep. Weller looked through binoculars. There's a comms tower nearby. Must be how it's coordinating. Layla felt it. The weight of what came next. If they could reach that tower, they could hijack a signal. Maybe even call in an extraction. But she also knew this pattern. That tower was bait, just like before. She turned to Weller. If I don't come back... You will, he cut in. She met his eyes. I'm not just a nurse anymore. You never were, he said. And together, they headed for the tower, into the lion's mouth. The tower stood like a skeletal finger jutting into the pale morning sky. Rusted steel, exposed wiring, and a single blinking red light at the top. Beneath it, a small utility shack nestled between rocks. The terrain around it was too open, too quiet, too perfect. Layla scanned a ridgeline above, her eyes narrowing. They were still half a kilometer out, but every step closer made her spine tighten. Something about the wind here, its absence, the hush of birds gone quiet, whispered of death. Weller stepped beside her, wiping sweat from his brow. You feel that? He asked under his breath. Yeah, Layla muttered. Same way I felt before Ghost Echo went dark. Weller glanced at her. We turning back? No, we're too close. We have wounded who won't make another night in this heat. We get a signal out now, or we bury them by sunset. He nodded grimly. Then what's the plan? Layla's eyes flicked over the landscape. Split formation. I'll lead a small team around the flank to draw attention. You bring the rest up the dry creek bed. Low profile. If shots start flying, hit hard, push through the shack, and get that tower transmitting. You're using yourself as bait, Weller said flatly. Layla smirked. I'm just a nurse, remember? 10 minutes later, she crouched behind a boulder with Morales, Krantz, and a silent sergeant named Timo, a quiet giant who hadn't spoken more than 10 words since the ambush but had eyes like storm clouds. He was their heavy gunner, and he handled his saw like it was an extension of his own heart rate. 2-minute delay, Layla said into her comms. Then move. Copy. Weller's voice came back tight. Stay sharp. She tapped Morales' shoulder. You ready, kid? He nodded, but his hands trembled slightly as he held his carbine. Steady hands save lives, she said gently, echoing the mantra she'd taught her med students back in Germany. He drew in a breath and steadied. Then Layla raised her hand and counted down. 3, 2, 1. She and her flank team broke from cover, zigzagging across the slope toward the shack, deliberately kicking up dust and noise. Immediately, the air tensed, not with bullets yet, but with attention. Layla could feel the crosshairs slipping over her back like cold fingers. Then it came. The first shot cracked from the ridgeline, high velocity, precision. It clipped the rock just behind Morales' leg. Sniper, high northeast. Layla shouted, diving behind a boulder as the second round punched into the dirt near Timo's foot. The trap had sprung. From the ridge came a roar, gunfire erupting in sharp bursts from 3, maybe 4 elevated positions. The enemy had waited until the squad was fully exposed before lighting up the canyon. Dust rose in choking clouds. Ricochets sparked off rock. Krantz returned fire, yelling, There's too many. They had this whole thing mapped. Layla peered through her scope and saw them. Enemy combatants in mismatched gear. Faces masked, eyes cold. Trained, not local militia. These were professionals. And worse, they weren't shooting to kill. They were hurting. They wanted the squad to move a certain way, like sheep to slaughter. Layla Keeter, Mike Weller, shift right. They're boxing us in. They want the comm shack as a kill zone. Weller's voice came back, panting. We're caught in a crossfire. Suppression up high. Rounds come from the tree line. Push left. Take the ridge path. Suddenly, a detonation rocked the air. A claymore, Probably, and the comms went dead. Layla's ears rang. She turned and saw Morales bleeding from his left arm, eyes wide with panic. "I'm hit," he gasped. "Pressure now!" She barked, pulling him behind a larger rock formation. She dropped to her knees, yanked a field wrap from her thigh pouch, and cinched it around his upper arm. "You're fine. Arterial's clear. Stay conscious. I'll be back." Krantz screamed. "They're flanking. What now, Captain?" She pulled her sidearm, checked the chamber, and stood. "We go loud." She looked at Timo. "Suppress the ridge. All of it. No mercy." The silent man nodded once, stepped from cover like a giant, walking into stormfire, and unleashed a hellish burst of gunfire that chewed through brush and stone like paper. Enemy silhouettes scattered. One crumpled, tumbling down the slope. Layla sprinted for the shack. Bullets chased her heels, but she never looked back. Inside, the calm shack was dark and stifling. Dust choked the air. A half-functional control panel blinked dimly in the gloom. She yanked the radio unit open and started rerouting circuits by hand, fingers moving by muscle memory. Her mind flicked back to that night years ago, inside a bombed-out villa in Syria, wiring a stolen Russian beacon under pressure, dead teammates at her feet. That was the night she stopped being a soldier and became a ghost. And now the ghost was waking up. The lights on the panel blinked green. She keyed the mic. "This is Alpha Squad. Emergency distress. Shatterpoint compromised. Under fire. Sending coordinates now. Immediate evac required." She didn't wait for a response. She jammed the unit's power cell into overload and ran. Behind her, the shack exploded, a fiery distraction that sent enemy gunners scrambling. She dropped into cover beside Morales and Krantz. "Go! Move now while they're disoriented." They broke into a sprint toward the base of the tower. Weller's team emerged from the tree line, battered but alive, dragging 2 wounded. One was screaming. The other was limp. Layla didn't flinch. She pointed to a rock outcrop. "Cover arc there. Krantz, get the wounded behind that slab. Morales, stay low." Then she saw it. The sniper. Top of the ridge. Far right. Concealed behind a metal sheet. His scope glinted. She ducked, rolled, came up behind the gunner's corpse, and took his rifle. Heavy. Long range. Familiar. She hadn't fired one in years. But her hands remembered. 1 breath. 2. The sniper shifted, targeting Weller now. Layla exhaled. Crack. The bullet punched clean through the sniper's scope and out the back of his skull. The canyon fell quiet. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the remaining enemies retreated into the hills, leaving silence in their wake. Layla lowered the rifle. Her pulse thundered, but her hands were still. She turned to find Weller watching her with wide eyes. Jesus, that was... "I used to be good at this," she said softly. "You still are." They secured the area, sweeping for stragglers. Krantz found 3 enemy bodies, all wearing the same insignia, a black triangle stitched onto their sleeves. "Not locals," he muttered. "No IDs. No insignias I recognize." Layla took one look and felt ice climb her spine. "I do." Weller looked at her. "From Ghost Echo?" She nodded. "These are cleaners. Black Site strike teams. When a mission goes wrong, they sanitize." His face paled. "You're saying with a mistake?" She nodded once. "Then why are you still alive?" he asked. She looked toward the smoking shack. "Because I don't die easy. And they forgot who I used to be." Back at the base of the tower, Morales sat dazed, blood drying on his sleeve. Layla knelt beside him and checked his vitals. "You're going to make it," she said. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "You should have been command. General. Something." She smiled faintly. "I've worn those boots. I chose these." He looked at her with awe. "You're not just a nurse." "No," she said, "but I am one." The comms relay they triggered did its job. 3 hours later, a Black Hawk swept in from the west, flanked by 2 Apaches. Dust kicked up, rotors thundered, and Layla shielded the wounded as soldiers disembarked. A major stormed toward her. Who's in charge here? Weller pointed to Layla without hesitation. The Major blinked. You're the medic. No, Weller said. She's the reason we're alive. The Major looked at her, confused. What's your rank again? Layla stood tall. Captain Layla Thorne. Ghost Echo. And I want answers. The Major's jaw clenched. That's above my clearance. She stepped forward. Then get someone who can answer. Because I buried enough friends for one lifetime. The dust hadn't even settled from the rotor wash when Layla shoved past the stunned Major and stormed toward the rear of the landing zone, her boots crunching over gravel and ash. She moved like a woman with blood in her teeth, furious, focused, and done being polite. Behind her, the Black Hawk crew quickly began loading the wounded. Morales was the first stretcher up. He tried to sit up and argue, but Layla pressed a hand to his chest and said gently, "You've earned your ride. Don't waste it." Morales hesitated. "You're not coming?" She gave him a tight smile. "Not yet." She turned back toward the command vehicles that had arrived with the exfil team, sleek, armored beasts that reeked of Washington. One in particular, a matte black SUV with a satellite dish, hadn't even turned off its engine. Layla walked straight up to it. The rear door opened before she could knock. Inside sat Colonel Adrian Monroe, a man who looked more like a polished lawyer than a battlefield commander. Aviators. Pressed uniform. Hands too clean. Eyes too still. "Captain Thorne," he said coolly, motioning to the seat across from him. "I hear you had quite the adventure." Layla didn't sit. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, covered in dirt, blood, and ash. "You sent us into a kill zone." Monroe didn't blink. "You were sent on a retrieval mission for a down drone. Risky territory. Unexpected resistance." "Cut the crap," Layla said. "We were herded. Intercept show comms leaks from our own frequency. The team we fought was a cleanup unit. Black badge. I've seen them before." Monroe sighed, taking off his glasses. "You're mistaken. That unit had no authorization from Central Command. We believe there's been a rogue element operating in the region, operating with our frequencies, our routes, and our timing. Come on, Colonel." He held her gaze. "You're out of your depth, Captain." She leaned in, voice low. "I was out of my depth when I buried 7 men, because of your last rogue element. Not again." For a flicker of a moment, Monroe's mask slipped. Just a hair. Layla saw it. "You're here to mop up the narrative," she said. "The squad survives?" That wasn't part of the plan. He didn't answer. So she pressed harder. "What was in that drone? The one we were sent to retrieve? Because it sure as hell wasn't just a camera bird." Monroe's jaw twitched. "You're not cleared." "Too late," she snapped. "I've already lived through the fallout. I've bled for it. I am cleared." The silence between them felt like a bomb waiting to go off. Then he said quietly, "You weren't supposed to find it. That drone was carrying biometric encryption keys, stolen during a cyber breach in Prague. Keys that unlocked several black vaults tied to NATO's most sensitive ops." Layla's eyes widened. "Why wasn't that in our briefing?" "Because knowledge is liability," he replied. "And, if I may be blunt, you weren't the intended retrieval team. You were a placeholder." "A placeholder?" she echoed. "You were expendable." The words hit like a hammer, not because she hadn't known, but because hearing it confirmed everything. Layla's jaw tightened. "Then you miscalculated." "I did," he said flatly. "You survived, and now you're a problem." Layla left the SUV without another word. She could have pulled her sidearm. She could have ended it there, one bullet between Monroe's eyes. But it wouldn't have changed the system. It would have just given someone else an excuse to bury her again. She didn't want revenge. She wanted truth. As she walked back toward the squad, now lined up near the Hellos, cleaning weapons, tending wounds, and stealing exhausted glances toward her, she knew exactly what she had to do. Weller approached her, handing over a data stick. "Morales pulled that from the tower's console before we blew it. Looks like telemetry logs, drone pings, and some files marked Hades A." Layla raised an eyebrow. "You read it?" "I'm not an analyst, but I think it's a kill list." She didn't blink. Targets. Operatives. Ghosts. Black ops, names no one's supposed to remember. Layla took the stick. Then she turned to Weller. I'm not getting on that bird. He nodded. Didn't think you would. You don't have to stay. I do. She looked at him, searching for sarcasm. There was none, just quiet conviction. Then a voice called out, Captain. Krantz jogged over, a bandage over his brow, rifle slung. We got a location ping from the last drone pass. Morales set it up before he left. Looks like a rendezvous point. Encrypted. Same black badge frequency from the team we fought. Layla took the printout. Coordinates. Elevation. Timestamp in 6 hours. Then we're going, she said. Orders. Krantz asked. Layla looked at the half-standing squad. The ones who weren't evac'd out. Hardened. Bloody. Loyal. Pack light. Move fast. Shoot first. They moved in a covered twilight. 5 of them now. Layla, Weller, Krantz, Timo, and new comms tech named Brooks, who volunteered the moment he overheard her briefing. Apparently, he'd lost a cousin in a training accident that never made the reports. They weren't just soldiers now. They were witnesses. The rendezvous point was a burned-out church nestled into the side of a rocky hill. Remnants of colonial concrete, collapsed roofing, and shattered stained glass long since turned to sand. Layla crouched near the edge of the structure, watching through night vision goggles as 3 unmarked SUVs pulled up. Men stepped out, 8 of them, uniforms without patches, weapons without serials. One of them carried a silver briefcase. Visuals confirm, Brooks whispered. That's them. Frequency match. Layla nodded. Copy. On my mark. Captain, Weller said, low. You sure you want to poke this bear? I don't want to, she said. I need to. Because this wasn't about survival anymore. This was about dragging truth out of the shadows and making someone see it. She signaled. The squad opened fire. Coordinated, precise, brutal. Within seconds, 3 of the 8 were down. The others scrambled, but Layla was already moving, weaving between debris, firing in bursts. She moved like death in motion, graceful and unrelenting. She tackled the courier with the case, wrenching it from his arms as he reached for a sidearm. He hissed, You don't know what you're doing. She pistol-whipped him with the butt of her SIG and snarled, No, you don't. The fight was over in under 4 minutes. Inside the case were 2 drives and a hard copy document stamped with a symbol Layla hadn't seen since Ghost Echo, a black delta over a skull. She read the top line. Hades A clearance. Termination protocols for contingent operators. Deactivation codes attached. Layla's hands trembled. This wasn't just about the drone. This was about cleaning house. Ghost Echo. Raven Group. Even Kestrel, 2 names erased from history. They weren't supposed to exist. And someone had decided to finish the purge, including her. Weller read over her shoulder. Jesus Christ. She looked up at him. You still with me? He nodded once. To the gates of hell. She turned to the others. We go dark. We leak this data anonymously, encrypted, distributed. I know who to send it to. And then we vanish. Change names. Burn the uniforms. We don't survive this by fighting the system. We survive it by exposing it. Brooks said, That's treason. Layla met his gaze. No, it's justice. They destroyed the case, burned the bodies, and hiked out of the valley into starlight. Every footstep a rebellion. At the edge of the ridge, Layla paused and looked back. It was over for now, but war never ends. It just gets new names. Back at Shatterpoint, no one questioned when Layla returned. The official report named her mission lead. Monroe had vanished, reassigned, apparently. A new colonel arrived, blinking at her with confusion. Like she was a rumor made real. She gave no briefings. She spoke no names. But she left a file, thin, quiet, sealed, marked for internal review. It contained a single note. Stop erasing the people who save your wars. Then she packed her kit, walked across the tarmac, and left. Weller caught up to her before she reached the helipad. You leaving for good? I have to, she said. You'll disappear? She smiled faintly. I always do. But this time, he said, they'll remember why. Layla looked back one last time to base. The soldiers who once mocked her, now watching her with respect, awe, even reverence. Then she turned to the rising sun and walked into the light. Rain had begun to fall. Not the torrential kind that slammed down in violent sheets, but a steady, grim drizzle. Enough to smear the dust into streaks on Layla's cheeks as she crouched in the shallow recess of a derelict communications hut in Sector 12. She'd chosen this place for a reason. It was off-grid, forgotten by the system, a place where secrets died or were born again. The wind whistled through broken vents above her head. She didn't flinch. In front of her, an open laptop emitted a soft hum. Lines of encrypted code rolled across the screen, a live feed of data being uploaded to a distributed network. The Hades A files, the kill list, the briefcase logs. Every classified atrocity Monroe's Black Badge operatives had tried to bury. It would take 15 minutes to finish transmitting. 15 long, fragile minutes. Behind her, Weller paced slowly, rifle in hand, eyes constantly scanning the tree line just beyond the crumbling wall. Brooks sat by the entrance, fingers dancing nervously over the trigger guard of the sidearm. Krantz and Timo were down the slope, posted at opposing flanks. The team had grown silent since the rendezvous assault. No jokes, no bravado. They had seen what they were truly up against now. Not insurgents, not enemy forces, but the invisible, untouchable machine that chewed up soldiers and spat out stories. Layla tapped a few final keystrokes, then shut the keyboard. She checked her watch. 13 minutes to go. Signal holding, she said aloud. No movement on perimeter, Weller answered. Yet, Brooks looked up from his crouch. They're going to come for us. Yes, Layla said. He hesitated. Do we have a plan? Layla stood slowly. Survive? Outside, the rain thickened. The jungle canopy hissed under the downpour, masking movement, muffling sound. Somewhere in the distance, a bird let out a long, mournful cry. Then silence again. The same silence Layla had heard the night Ghost Echo was wiped out. She walked out into the open, scanning the surrounding cliffs with a pair of borrowed thermals. For a moment, nothing. Then, flickers. Hot outlines. 6. No, 8. She lowered the goggles. They're here. Weller stepped forward. Same playbook. Same units. Black Badge again. Monroe's not wasting time this round. You think he knows we've uploaded the files? I think he's praying we haven't finished. She turned to Brooks. We hold them off until the final bite is out. He nodded nervously. Krantz's voice came over comms. Captain, movement on ridge. Clockwise sweep. They're testing us. Layla clicked her comm. Do not engage until I say. Let them think we're caught flat-footed. Then she turned back to Weller. I need 10 more minutes. Can you give me that? He didn't hesitate. You'll have 15. The first shot came from the east. A single pop, silence, cracking into the tree beside Krantz's position. The sniper was probing, hunting. Layla raised her rifle, exhaled, and scanned the tree line. There, she whispered, tracking a shadow against the wet leaves. She adjusted for wind and rain. Her fingers squeezed. Crack. The target dropped like a stone. Weller muttered over comms. 1 down. Then all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from 3 angles, splinters flying from tree trunks, muzzle flashes dancing like lightning across the hill. Krantz returned fire in bursts. Timo's heavy repeater barked like a beast. Brooks ducked inside and covered the laptop with his body as rounds peppered the outside walls of the comm hut. Layla darted forward, sliding behind a half-collapsed generator. She laid down suppressive fire, then called out, Keep them on the perimeter. Don't let them draw us out. A grenade arced through the rain, landing too close to the bunker. Weller spotted it first. Move! He dove for it, grabbing and hurling it down the slope. It detonated midair, blasting water and shrapnel in a cloud of steam. Layla was already beside him, checking his side. Blood. I'm fine, he growled. Keep going. Inside, the upload ticked to 82%. Brooks yelled, "We're close." Layla returned to the doorway, ducked a 3-round burst, and dropped 2 more enemies coming up the eastern incline. They were pressing harder now, more aggressive, faster. She knew why. They detected the outgoing signal. They weren't here to clean up anymore. They were here to stop the truth. And Layla was the truth. The fight stretched into chaos. At 89%, Krantz screamed to the comm, "I'm hit. Legs gone numb. Can't feel it." "Timo's down," someone else roared. Layla pressed her lips into a line, dragging a field pack off her back. She ran downslope in a crouch, heart hammering, bullets slicing the rain around her. She found Krantz half-curled behind a rock, his thigh bleeding heavily. "I got you," she muttered, applying pressure. "You're not dying here." "You can't stop all of them," he groaned. "There's too many." "Watch me." She jammed a morphine injector into his thigh, tightened a wrap, and left a smoke grenade beside him. "When this pops, roll left. Weller's above you." She spun back toward the hut. Timo was slumped nearby, riddled with rounds. Already gone. Layla stopped for half a second, enough to murmur, "I'll carry this for you." Then she ran. Inside the hut, Brooks was shouting. "Signal's degrading. They're jamming." Layla shoved him aside and dropped to her knees. "Hardwire the burst. Don't rely on open frequency. Use the Hades loopback." He blinked. How do you?" "I designed it. Just do it." His hands flew. Sparks flew from the exposed circuit board. Upload 96%. Layla turned and knelt at the doorway again. One of the black badge units was coming up fast. Close quarters. Rifle up, confident. He didn't expect a nurse with blood on her hands and hell in her eyes. She met him with a boot to the chest, slammed him to the wall, disarmed his pistol, and shot him point blank. Outside, Weller shouted, "They're falling back." Layla keyed her mic, "Don't pursue. Hold." Inside the hut, 99%. Brooks said nothing. He just stared at the blinking cursor. Upload complete. File transfer successful. Layla exhaled. Then she stood and stepped outside. The rain had slowed. The forest had grown still again. The enemy was gone. Not because they'd been beaten in battle, but because they'd lost something far more valuable. Control. The truth was out now. They burned the hut. They left the site. By morning, they were deep in the foothills, heading for a ghost route Layla remembered from years back, one that led to an abandoned aid outpost where helicopters could track thermal and satellites didn't bother. Weller limped slightly. Krantz was on morphine. Brooks was eerily quiet. Only Layla walked with her head high, because something in her had shifted. Not hardened, no. She'd been steel for years. But anchored, solid. For the first time in a long time, she was no longer walking in the shadow of Ghost Echo. She was the echo now, the voice that would not go silent. Later that night, huddled by a low fire, Weller looked at her across the flames. "They'll hunt us now." She nodded. "They were always going to." "You think what we did will matter?" "It already does," she said. "Somewhere, someone's reading that file. Someone's waking up." She glanced toward the darkness beyond the trees. "And I swore to myself, not one more life lost for secrets. Not one more medic treated like baggage. Not one more war built on lies." She looked at the others. "I might be just a nurse, but that's exactly who they should have feared." The sky turned copper as the sun descended behind the jagged cliffs of the Farahi Divide. The jungle thinned into jagged rocks and barren slopes, but the heat remained thick, suffocating, and clinging like guilt. Layla stood at the edge of a ravine, her boots pressing into the cracked red earth, the barrel of her rifle warm against her shoulder. She stared at the narrow path ahead, knowing full well what was coming. They were being hunted. Hard. For 3 days since uploading the Hades files, Layla and the remnants of her team had been moving nonstop, evading drones, dodging thermal sweeps, and avoiding every major evac corridor. The transmission had reached the network. That much they confirmed. But the silence since then had been deafening. No allies, no extraction, no safe houses, and no forgiveness. Weller joined her at the ridge, his face gaunt, bandage soaked through at the shoulder. Krantz was behind them, half limping, muttering obscenities under his breath as he cleaned his weapon again and again. Brooks barely spoke now, the weight of what they'd unleashed sitting visibly on his shoulders like a ghost. Layla didn't say a word. She was too busy watching the horizon. And then, finally, she saw them. Dust trails. 6 vehicles. 1 drone in low hover, advancing from the west like a slow, deliberate fist. "They're here," she said. Weller squinted. "Black badge. No logos. No lights. Standard formation. They're not here to talk." He glanced at her. "Then what's the play?" Layla turned back toward the abandoned supply depot behind them. Little more than a crumbling outpost from an old UN relief effort, long since stripped of value, nestled between 2 stone ridges. "We hold here," she said. "Final stand." Brooks stared at her in disbelief. "We're outnumbered 10-1. Krantz added, "They got vehicles, drones, probably thermals. We got 2 rifles, a saw, and a tech with PTSD. Layla met their eyes, voice steady. "Then we fight smarter." Within the hour, she had turned the ravine into a maze of death, using debris, old supply crates, rusted corrugated walls, and natural choke points. Layla created a layered defense. Tripwires with flares, improvised IEDs from fuel canisters, blind zones rigged with fragmentation. She deployed the last of their claymores facing uphill and made sure every fallback point had cover, field of fire, and an escape route just in case. It was surgical. It was terrifying. It was everything she used to do back when she wasn't just a nurse. Weller watched her work with quiet awe. You ever think about what you'd be if they hadn't buried Ghost Echo? Layla didn't look up. "I think I'd be dead." He nodded slowly. "But now..." She paused, wiping sweat from her brow. "Now I'm what they created when they tried to forget me." The sun was barely kissing the ridgeline when the first bullet cracked through the silence. It hit a rusted signpost above Krantz's head and sent it spinning. Immediately, Weller returned fire from his high perch. Brooks radioed movement at the northeast slope. Then came the second volley. Precise, methodical, the black badge units were here. Layla saw them first, silhouettes darting from cover, using mirror helmets to scatter laser rangefinders. They weren't just operatives. They were purgers, trained to erase, not detain. She didn't hesitate. "Detonate line 1. Brooks hit the trigger. A massive flare ignited the tripwires at the ravine entrance, flooding the canyon with blinding light and plumes of fire. Screams erupted as 2 of the assailants stumbled into a hidden minefield. Layla moved, fast and low, weaving between boulders. She reached Krantz's position and laid down suppressive fire. He grinned at her through gritted teeth. "Remind me to never doubt you again." She smirked. "Noted. Cover me." She pivoted and sprinted across the ravine, ducking a hail of bullets, and took position on a ridge. Her rifle cracked, once, twice, 3 times. 3 bodies dropped. A second drone buzzed overhead. "Brooks!" she shouted. "I've got it!" He paused and cursed. "They're jamming frequency hopping." Hard reset the controller. Run an override burst. Burn the fuses if you have to. He obeyed without question, sweat dripping from his temples. Seconds later, the drone's altitude fluctuated. Then it dropped, not exploded, but fell like a broken toy, slamming into the rocks below with a hollow thud. Krantz hooped. "That's 1. Don't celebrate yet," Layla warned. They were still coming. As night fell, the battle reached fever pitch. Black badge forces swarmed the lower ravine, testing every approach. They advanced in squads of 4, efficient, disciplined, utterly silent. Weller held the high perch, pinning down flanking units. Brooks rotated between firing and running diagnostics on stolen tech. Krantz kept one hand on his bandaged leg and the other on his trigger. And Layla moved like a ghost. She slipped through the lines, patched wounds mid-firefight, lobbed smokes for cover, and set booby traps as she retreated. At one point, she tackled a soldier in melee, stole his pistol, and used it to shoot 2 of his own teammates before disappearing into the shadows. They tried to encircle her. They failed, but not without cost. At midnight, a round clipped Weller's side. He went down hard, blood spreading across his ribs. Layla reached him in seconds. "No," she said, pressing a pack to the wound. "You stay with me." "I'm good," he gasped, clutching her wrist. "You have to finish it. Not without you. You always were stubborn. And you always underestimated me." He laughed, a wet, painful sound, then passed out. She stabilized him, dragging him into a fallback position beneath the outpost's old stairwell. Then she turned to face the ridge again. The air was thick with smoke and firelight. The enemy was closing in for their final push. Layla knew what that meant. She picked up her rifle, almost out of rounds, and checked her pistol. One full mag. That was it. She looked at Brooks and Krantz. "This is it," she said. "They break us now. We're gone." Brooks nodded, lip trembling. "We're with you." Krantz tightened his grip. "To hell and back, Captain." She exhaled, stepped forward, and whispered herself the words that had once been carved into the walls of Ghost Echo's training compound. Your last breath is their first warning. The final wave came in like a tide. Explosives. Smoke. Drones. But Layla had planned for this. She detonated the fallback charges, creating a wall of fire. Then she and Krantz unleashed every last round they had. Brooks redirected a solar panel to blind the drone optics. Weller, half-conscious, muttered fire orders to no one in particular. The black badge units faltered. Some hesitated. That was all she needed. Layla sprinted through the chaos, jumped from a ledge, landed hard beside the enemy command unit, and tossed a flare grenade into the open carrier. The flash stunned them. Her bullets finished the job. She grabbed the fallen radio unit and keyed into their frequency. Then she said it, the words that would travel through encrypted channels, through ears that had once labeled her a ghost. "This is Captain Layla Thorne, formerly Ghost Echo. You sent wolves. I sent them back in bags. If any of you are still listening, I'm not just a nurse. I'm what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness. Come again, and I promise, I'll remember you." She dropped the radio and walked back into the fire. By dawn, it was over. The ravine was quiet. The bodies were cold. The black badge operatives had been wiped out. Layla sat on a rock, head bowed, rifle across her knees. Her uniform was torn. Her arms were bloodied. Her voice was gone. But her eyes burned like torches in the rain. Krantz stumbled toward her. We did it." She nodded. He looked around at the smoking battlefield. Are we safe?" Layla looked up at the rising sun. "No," she said. "But now, at least, we're not silent." The battlefield was silent, but it wasn't peaceful. Smoke still curled up in the ravine, mingling with the mist rolling in from the east, softening the jagged rocks and torn earth. Sunlight filtered through ash clouds and broken tree limbs, casting long rays across the bodies that lay where they'd fallen. Some in pools of blood, others still clutching their weapons. The scent of cordite, mud, and death lingered in the air. Layla sat on a collapsed supply crate. A field dressing clamped over her left forearm, her right shoulder stained with dry blood. Her jaw was clenched, but her breathing was calm. She was still, alert, the kind of stillness only survivors possessed. The kind that wasn't rest, but endurance. Behind her, Weller lay propped against a wall inside the depot's broken stairwell, his chest wrapped in gauze. His breathing had stabilized. He watched her quietly. He hadn't said a word in an hour. He didn't need to. A few feet away, Brooks crouched by the comms gear they'd scavenged from the enemy's command unit. He was watching a live feed from an encrypted satellite burst. Slow, grainy images of external news chatter, field reports, and internal leaks. It was happening. The data was out. The world was reacting. Krantz limped over, still bandaged and bruised, a canteen in hand. He held it out toward Layla. "You should drink." She took it without a word and sipped, eyes still fixed on the horizon. "They're saying your name on the encrypted forums," Krantz added, almost in disbelief. "Not your full record. Just fragments. A few leaked images. Someone posted drone footage of the ravine. One commenter called you Echo's widow. Another said you're what happens when war underestimates its angels. Layla's expression didn't change. Names mean nothing. Truth means everything. Weller grunted. Try telling that to the Pentagon. Layla finally looked at him. They're not the ones I'm talking to. They move the bodies themselves, one by one. Every fallen Black Badge operator was stripped of weapons, tagged, and placed into shallow graves along the ravine's ridge. Layla didn't do it out of respect. Not for them. She did it to stop the vultures. And because she believed that every war, no matter how dirty, needed to end with a name, even if spoken only once. She made Brooks log their faces, send them anonymously to the Geneva Review Board. She said, let someone track their origins, follow the threads. And when they follow them to you, he asked, they already have. By mid-morning, they finally rested. Not sleep, that was still days away, but rest nonetheless. The kind that comes when your muscles stop anticipating the next round, when your hands stop shaking, when your mind lets go of the breath it's been holding. Krantz napped against a rock. Brooks leaned against the remains of a drone rotor. Weller dozed beside a rusted UN barrel, twitching every few minutes as ghosts passed behind his eyelids. Only Layla stayed awake. She sat by the fire they'd built out of broken crates and enemy armor. She stared into it as if searching for someone. The ghosts of her past weren't haunting her anymore. They were listening. That evening, the radio crackled. An unfamiliar voice. British. Female. This is Watchtower 6. Repeat. Watchtower 6, calling any ghost echo survivors. Data packet verified. Command compromised. Extraction available. Code phrase, Iron Mercy. Layla reached for the handset, her voice raspy. This is Captain Layla Thorne. Code confirmed. There was a pause. Then, Captain Thorne, it's an honor. You're the reason we're standing up again. We got you on satellite. Extraction inbound. ETA 30. Layla blinked slowly. So it had worked. They hadn't just screamed into the void. The void had screamed back. They burned what they couldn't carry. The rest, they packed quietly. No chatter, no celebration. Layla gave each man new coordinates, new names, new ID tags from the Black Badge packs. They were ghosts now, all of them, not just Layla. You sure about this? Weller asked as she handed him a field passport. None of us make it out of this alive, but some of us can start over. Brooks frowned. What about you? I'll do what I've always done, Layla said. Disappear. Krantz stepped forward. But you did it. You beat them. Why run now? Layla looked at him, not with authority, but with gravity. Because if they find me, they'll find you, and if they bury me quietly, they'll think the fire's gone out. But if I vanish, they'll keep looking, keep burning their own fuel-chasing shadows. That's how we stay free. Weller studied her. You're not just a nurse. She gave a half-smile. No, I'm the nightmare they created when they stopped seeing medics as warriors. The Black Hawk arrived at dusk. It came low and fast, a matte black shadow sweeping in under radar, flanked by 2 decoy drones. No markings, no insignias, just an open ramp and a waiting co-pilot in full tactical gear, face hidden behind mirrored shades. You Layla Thorne? The co-pilot asked as the rotors thumped the air. She nodded. You're not what I expected. Neither were they. He grinned slightly, motioned toward the ramp. You ride middle row. No name spoken from here on. Weller, Brooks, and Krantz were already inside. Layla turned once more, facing the ravine, the place where she had been betrayed, where she had been reborn, where she had become more than her file, her rank, her role, the place where they had called her just a nurse, and learned what war truly meant. She stepped aboard. They flew into the night. Somewhere below, 1,000 stories were unraveling. Investigations were beginning. High-ranking officers were scrubbing their files. A few would take the fall. Most would vanish before questions could catch them. But Layla's story had escaped them. It had grown. She was being whispered about in intelligence briefings. Journalists were chasing leads about a woman in the jungle who'd fought off an elite kill team. Soldiers in distant FOBs were swapping stories of a medic who dragged 3 men out of an ambush, fired a sniper rifle with surgical precision, and stared down the brass without blinking. They didn't know the whole story. They didn't need to. They just needed to know her name. 2 weeks later, in a secure underground room buried beneath an anonymous embassy in Eastern Europe, a file slid across a steel table. The man in the suit picked it up. It contained only a picture, a woman walking away from a smoking ravine, rifle slung over one shoulder, medical kit in the other. No insignia, no timestamp, just a note at the bottom. Don't underestimate the ones who save lives. They'll be the last one standing. 3 months after that, a nurse, tall, quiet, sharp-eyed, walked into a refugee field clinic in northern Sudan. She wore no name tag, carried no military credentials. But the way she moved, the way she saw everything, the way she checked exits without thinking, made the security detail stand straighter. She set up triage alone, reorganized the meds, cleaned wounds, taught volunteers how to set a field dressing in 30 seconds flat. And when a local warlord tried to claim the clinic as his own, she walked up to him alone, stared him in the eye, and whispered something in his native tongue. He left in silence. No one ever tried again. They didn't know her history, but they felt it. And so the legend spread. She had no name, only whispers. The medic who moved like a ghost, the nurse who shot like a sniper, the woman who stood when everyone else fell. They called her a phantom, a myth, a cautionary tale for those who underestimated healers. But those who knew, those who survived, they just called her Layla. And they never called her just a nurse again. If you like this story, please subscribe to support this channel.